Welcome back to the 11th hour. We wanted to take a moment tonight to focus on some of the other stories in the news competing for our attention this week. And we could and try to do this every week. President Trump's commission on voter fraud is getting pushback from about half the states in this country who say that voter info like Social Security numbers is confidential. Of course, some object to the formation of this commission in the first place. The whole idea for it came about after false claims that millions of illegal votes had cost Donald Trump the popular vote. Mississippi's Republican Secretary of State said of the commission, quote, "They can go jump in the Gulf of Mexico." We'll take that as a no. There was also a report this week on the growing frustration being felt by the Secretary of State, who presides over a State Department with a slew of vacancies, both department heads and ambassador postings, and then some. Political reports, it came to a head at the White House. They're reporting under the headline, "Tillerson blows up at top White House aide." It goes on to say that it was over, quote, "White House attempts to push personnel on him." And about that border wall, the New York Times reports that the Department of Homeland Security will begin building prototypes in the San Diego area this summer. For all of it, we are joined tonight by a journalist who's been tracking these stories and more. Niall Stanage with us from the Capitol. He is White House columnist at The Hill. So, Niall, first things first. The Voter Fraud Commission, the issue here is not only its lineage, invention, and purpose for being, but how much they now want from all these states, one of which now famously told them where to jump.
That's exactly right, Brian. And I think that's that point, the point about private information, that has caused even Republican secretaries of state to object to this. Once you have lost the Republican Secretary of State in Mississippi, if you're a Republican president or a Republican presidential panel, that's probably a bad sign. And I think it does go, in fairness to the tradition on traditional conservatism, where there has been skepticism about government infringement on personal privacy, and that's really why there is bipartisan pushback on this proposal at the moment.
Onto the subject of Tillerson and all things foreign policy. A busier than average time is coming up for him with the G20. But on the Tillerson coverage, you can pick your sides. I saw coverage critical of him this week. I saw journalism that said, you know, this is how diplomacy dies. I think it was Chuck Todd who started the guessing as to what he dubbed Rexit. When will Rex exit the Trump administration, if ever? And then we've seen this writing about Tillerson's frustration that so many posts are lying vacant and ergo dormant at the State Department.
So there are 2 points here, Brian. People that I speak to at the State Department have certainly been dismayed about the Trump administration's general stance on many international issues. And of course, Rex Tillerson is the head of that department. As for him and his frustrations, I think what we have seen is a volcano that has been smoking for some time, finally erupting over this matter of personnel. But there have been a lot of embarrassments foisted upon Rex Tillerson. He pushed for the president to stay in the Paris Climate Accord. He did not. He pushed for the president to reassure NATO leaders at a speech at NATO headquarters. He did not. And most embarrassingly, I think, for Tillerson, he tried to de-escalate tensions pertaining to the Gulf nation of Qatar, only for the president to come out within hours and restate his charge that Qatar was involved in harboring or nurturing terrorism. This is not the kind of behavior that a former CEO of ExxonMobil is probably accustomed to.
Which has been pointed out as a company that is also a kind of traveling nation state on its own. And finally, on the border wall, I know you don't work for the administration, but can you look into the camera and tell people that this is actually going to be funded and built? What then is this prototype operation we're reading about?
The prototype operation is something for which the administration has got about $20 million to build these prototypes. That's nowhere near the sum of money that is required to build the actual wall. Depending who you listen to, that could be anything from $15 billion to $70 billion. Even Republican members of Congress are balking at that kind of expenditure. So yes, we have the prototype being built, but that is a long, long way away from the actual wall being erected, as President Trump promised.
Niall, we're going to try to stay at this with you and other journalists. There is so much else to record keep on, from EPA to the Department of Education to the Pentagon and aircraft carriers and all of it. But thank you so much for joining us from Capitol Hill on a Friday night. Our favorite export from Belfast, Niall Stanage. Appreciate it very much. As summer begins, we turn our eyes skyward when the 11th hour continues.